Let's do one more thing here that sort of, I guess, captures this whole thing. I mean, Biden is just losing it. He just is. It's a sad, depressing reality. We can all joke about it all the time, and I do. And then my mom always says, stop joking about it so much because it's actually quite sad. He's the pilot of the plane, and the pilot is clearly incapable. Here he is yesterday when he thought he was just going to freely take some questions.
And I'll be now happy to take your questions. Since there's so many people out there, been given a list. Now, how about Chris of the Associated Press? First question.
Mr. President, how does no. Come on, let's go.
So they hand him a list. We don't know who they is. And then when other people try to ask him questions, they get pushed away and rushed away. I'm fairly certain if this was the orange guy, the media would be screaming about it. Karol, it's depressing, right? Like we don't, whether you like the guy or not, whether you think that they're trying to usher in the New World Order or not, this isn't the way it's supposed to be.
Right. Whether you like him or not is irrelevant here, because I think we need to hear from our president. You don't have to agree with him. You don't have to disagree with him. We need to hear him speak. We need to hear him talk to the American people. And again, every time he talks to us, he says something crazy and we're all like, wait, what? But in general, we don't hear from him that often. And the fact that he only goes to media that is his preferred media people, you know, I don't know who Chris at Associated Press is, but that Chris at Associated Press should know that he's being chosen because they think that he's going to be, you know, kinder to Biden or just softer. If I'm Chris, I don't think that looks particularly great for me, that they're confident I'm not going to ask a difficult question and throw the president off his game.
Liz, did you happen to see the other part in this speech? We should have grabbed the clip where he goes in on the very fine people hoax, and he says that, you know, this is why he decided to run for president, because Trump said there were very fine people in Charlottesville. And we know, and I've debunked it a million times, and all the internet conspiracy theorists have done the same thing, where Trump immediately did condemn the white supremacists and the neo-Nazis. But that Biden is just repeating lies that are put in front of him. He doesn't know what he's saying, and I just don't know what to do at this point.
Well, it's interesting. I did a whole episode on my show last week about this trifecta of, I called it this trifecta of evil that's happening in our country, where we have corrupt politicians who don't want to be held accountable to their voters. They're doing things like what Hunter Biden did. They're doing things like trying to spend our money, like with the modern monetary theory. I don't need to give you an example of all the corrupt things they're doing. We have corrupt politicians. We all understand that. But the reason they're able to get away with their corruption is twofold. It's because we have big tech that's censoring reality. They're censoring any information that would expose the corruption, right? They're creating this information vacuum by saying, nope, if you send a link about Hunter Biden, we are going to actively stop you from doing that because we don't want you to hear about this story. And then in this vacuum of information that they've created, then the mainstream media comes in and they propagate lies. They're not the censors. They're the ones who are telling you, actually, now that we have the truth out of the way, here's what we want you to believe. And it's only because of this trifecta, these three parts of this apparatus, that corrupt politicians are actually able to get away with their corruption. Otherwise, we would find out and we would never stand for it. This would be a bipartisan rejection of this kind of corruption. That's what we see with the story about Charlottesville, this very fine people narrative from the left. We know empirically what the truth is. This is not a controversial thing to say. You can look up the video yourself. Trump actually said, except for white supremacists and neo-Nazis. Like, he was not talking about them.
Who I condemn totally.
Big tech censors conservative. Yeah, he condemned them totally. He did, and he did it again and again. And big tech censors conservatives who try to tell the truth. And then the mainstream media comes in with their false narrative, and that's what people believe. The only reason Biden is able to get away with his corruption and lies is because of big tech and the mainstream media. That's why he calls on these people, because they are a critical part of his apparatus.
Karol, as someone that works at the Post and Fox and a columnist and journalist, I mean, do you remember when it really went so haywire with so many of your colleagues or so many of the people at these other organizations?
I think it is Trump. I think that was the moment where they lost it, where they no longer even pretended to see themselves as some arbiters of truth. They became, anti-Trump as a position and as a job. I remember Brian Stelter working this out kind of publicly and saying, like, are we supposed to fact check Trump in real time? Are we supposed to ask questions that we know he's going to, not tell the truth to? But as if that's only limited to Trump, right? They're not fact checking anybody else. So it became like our mission is no longer to be journalists, where liberal media has always been a thing. It's not like that's new. It's not like they've just began pushing their positions. But I think what changed is the openness with which they do it, and the way that they have changed their entire focus. It's really no longer about telling American people the truth. It's about telling American people the story that they think that American people need to hear.
Right. And by the way, it's like you got to sort of admire the machine, to your point, Liz, because they can get away with the lies, because then there's big tech and the machinery that we're always playing catch up and trying to whack-a-mole of the lies. We're all running behind that. And we do need a little bit of a paradigm shift, which is my final question, which is, you guys know how I try to do this show. I try to give people at the end, especially on a Friday, like the vision of the positive vision of how we get through this thing and how we make some sense of it, and how, as I know you guys both as friends, you can live good, happy lives in the midst of this lunacy. Liz, how can we do it?
I say this tongue in cheek in a sense, because I am myself obsessed with politics, of course, but make sure that you have your perspectives in proper order. I mean, you should be spending time with your family. You should be spending time with your spouse. You should be having children. You should be going to church. You should be having a community. You should be pursuing hobbies. You should be doing things for enjoyment. You should be partaking in charity. I mean, all of these things. I mean, I know I sound like a preacher at this point, but all of these things are the joy of life. The reason that we're in politics, the reason that we're in political commentary, the reason that we're in media is to protect those things. Now, so often we have so much passion for what we do that we get I should speak for myself here. I get obsessed with it. I'm a workaholic by nature because I love what I do, but I have to make sure that I don't lose sight of those things, because those are the joys of life. So what I do on the weekend is I spend time with my husband, I spend time with my daughter, I spend time with my family and my friends, and I do the things that we are fighting to protect. And so, like I said, I know this sounds cliche, it sounds cheesy, but this is what we as conservatives have to remember to do. It also helps us order what we need to protect politically based on what we want to do with our families.